son of an 8th saint, was baptized by the guy who killed his father.
Wow.
And like just that's something only God can do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And just being a part of that in any way. And that doesn't necessarily always, I know we're focusing on global mission here, but that could look like a neighbor, that could look like your workplace, that could look like, you know, we're all called to be a part of this amazing story.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Your Nations podcast. Today I don't have Nate to go whoop whoop whoop, but actually I have an amazing couple with me today here I'm excited about, which is James and Danielle Gullet. James is a very young pilot, and we're gonna dig into that a little bit. And Danielle, she works with what's the word you use again?
Doula. Labor
Doula.
Yeah.
Which is basically helping deliver babies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that was a new word for me that I learned from her as we were chatting in the beginning. So Doula. And it's just an amazing time we're gonna have together. Guys, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
It would be awesome just for us to have this lovely conversation, get to know you guys a little bit, and understand how you were called, where that all happened, how they all go by together. But one of the things that I always like asking is, you guys are married, right?
Yes.
Yes.
By the way, you never know, it might be. I'm kidding, I know they were married.
Yeah.
But how did it happen? How did you guys get to know each other? Was it in the mission field, or was it not? Was it at uni? Because you guys are very young. How old are you, James?
I'm 21.
21 years old, and you're married already?
Yeah, married at 19.
I'm 22.
22.
Yep. We married at 19 and 20.
Well,
So
we've got something in
babies.
common right there,
Yeah.
because I also married at 19, my
There
wife
we
was
go.
18.
Ah, no.
Very
So-
few of us.
Oh,
but
yeah,
there we
yeah,
are.
exactly.
You're even younger.
So I've been in it for about 16 years now.
Fantastic.
We're on
3
2.
kids.
Yeah.
So
You've got quite a way to go.
Yeah.
But it's going to be awesome, guys, to have this conversation. But then let us know, James, how did it happen, mate? What?
Yeah. Well, so we were both blessed with being missionary kids. So
Okay, both MKs.
both MKs, yeah. When I was about 7 years old, my parents went out to Kenya in East Africa, and my dad was running a Christian bookshop there. They were selling and then producing, getting Kenyan pastors to write books, and they were distributing good, solid theological books, distributing them across East Africa. So that's what I was doing, and I went to an American school whilst I was there.
Was
And
it
funnily
a
enough-
boarding school? Or was...
Not a boarding school, just
Okay.
a regular
So-
everyday school.
Pop in and out.
Pop in and out, exactly.
Alright.
And well, Danielle went there as well.
Yeah.
So we met when
Okay.
we were about 7 years old.
I was
and
very young.
very young.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
we weren't planning on getting married then.
All right.
Yeah.
That's
So
good to know.
we did 3 or 4 years, 3 or 4 years together. And then when I was 11, I think you were 12.
Yeah.
You went back to the States. Danielle's from the USA.
Yeah.
And I came back to the UK. And so that was where we initially met, and then we lost contact for a good number of years.
So were your parents sort of friends then? Did they keep that contact or not
They
really?
knew each other, so both of our moms volunteered at the church occasionally, just helping
At
out
the
with
school.
like or what did I say?
At the church.
Church.
Oh, school.
school.
At the school, just helping out with like student teaching or random things like that.
Okay.
Student teaching, volunteer teaching,
Mhm.
stand-in teaching, substitute. There we go.
Okay.
And so they kind of met and passed, but they weren't necessarily in direct contact with each other.
All right.
So there were
They
a
were-
couple
yeah.
different occasions, like my dad worked in aviation and his family came by the hangar once to be shown around, and just he was interested in planes then, and that kind of sparked interest a little bit in working in Mission Aviation for him. So there were connections, but not, I think they were friends on Facebook probably.
Yeah, then
But
there was
other than
nothing
that,
after we both
yeah.
left.
Yeah.
But there was no contact with anybody for maybe 5, 6, 7 years.
I think it was
6 years, I guess. 17 maybe when I was.
So you left when you were 11.
Yeah, and you left when you were 12.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
So almost at the same time you guys.
almost at the same time. We went
it
back.
was the same
That's
year.
interesting.
Same year.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
But Danielle spent 10 years.
Yeah,
you
I
spent
moved there when I
longer.
was 2, so it was my whole childhood that I remember.
Oh wow.
It's very
So,
foundational years. And so then we were apart during majority of our teenage years. And then sort of around 17, I was sort of, it was in the UK, and I realised that I really wanted just to connect with people that understood my past, and a little bit about where I wanted to go. At this point, God was really placing a call on my heart to return in some form of global mission.
Mm.
How
How old were you then?
17.
17.
So I reached out to classmates that I found from that time in Kenya on Instagram, on social media, and I chatted with some, and then by sort of mutual friends, we reconnected and we started chatting a little bit, and over some time, a little bit of time, we sort of realized that there was a mutual interest, mutual call on our hearts to return to be part of God's global mission, to return somewhere overseas. And really it went from there. And I guess 2 years later we got married. So
which was fast.
Especially we were long distance, so really when we got engaged we had spent 6 weeks in the same country as each other.
Okay.
Everything else had been
you'd been dating for a little while, nearly a year.
We had been dating for a while, but as it had all been across the ocean.
I can relate because with me it was the same.
Yeah.
So we met very short, me and my wife, and then after 4 months dating, she went back to Brazil, and I was here. Yeah. So then it was a whole year apart, and then got married.
Yeah.
Now until death takes us apart.
Yes. So romantic.
But guys, this is awesome. I mean, such a young age to be sort of reconnected, and now actually falling in love with each other, getting married. 21 and 22-year-old going into mission. Now that's something. So in your teenage years, did you have, apart from being there with your families, did you have any sort of involvement within sort of mission within the church? Did you go on any short mission trip? How was that for you guys?
Yeah, I did a couple different trips. So I did, like, during my high school, secondary years, I did Panama and Ethiopia, just on very short-term trips.
Ethiopia, so what did you do in Ethiopia?
I worked with an organization called Hawassa Hope, and they work a lot with orphanages, but then also just general health education in rural communities. So it was like 10 days that I went, but it was really sweet, and just to be back in East Africa was really good for me, given that my heart was, mostly in Kenya. And so it was good to just, visit that side of the world again, and that kept the spark alive for mission. And then my big one that really was life-altering for me was right after I finished secondary school. I was not loving the idea of more schooling, going to university. So
we can relate again.
So I was postponing it and making sure that when I did go to university, it was for something that I actually really wanted to do. Okay. I knew that I liked the medical field, but there's a lot of schooling that often goes into the medical field. So I thought, well, let me just try and get my feet wet, go shadow under some people and watch, and just see what this is all about, see if I actually want to pursue it. And right around then, one of my friends from Kenya had moved to South Sudan, and they had opened up a clinic there, and they asked if I wanted to come and shadow in the clinic. So I went, at 17, I went and spent 3 months in South Sudan.
So is that where it sparkled the desire to become a doula?
Yes, and I fell in love with labor and delivery. I helped in about 40 births and just loved it.
So the doula is normally that natural birth, right?
Yeah, it's more, it can be any type of birth, but you're the emotional, relational side more than the medical intervention side. So you do work with the medical side, obviously, but it's much less hands-on. It's more trying to get the mom to
relax and sort of get
exactly. And no matter what the labor looks like or the birth, whether it goes C-section or whether it's a home birth, it's making the mom comfortable and just really being a support partner for them.
That's not an easy job.
And making her wishes known, because I feel like often
it's being an advocate for them as well.
You said you wanted this, and in this moment, someone needs to step up and exactly advocate for what you're doing. So.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Because I mean, I've got 3 kids. All of them were natural birth.
Oh wow!
And I know how hard it is for the women when they're at that point. I mean, the dads just get shout.
So hard for you.
I really struggle with that.
I think your wife might say something different.
But it's just awesome to hear how you moved into that such an early age.
Yeah.
And then basically you find yourself
getting
falling in love with something that you actually, you can use that anywhere around the world.
Yeah, that's the hope.
Exactly, and that's amazing to see that. And now you're actually, first step that you're taking, that you're going out and basically giving back again.
And what's really nice is in places that often we're serving, there isn't a fully functioning hospital. It is very much this is what we've got. This is going to be a very natural birth. We haven't got a lot of modern medicines to help this process, so being able to have those skills is really good for that kind of environment.
If I had become like an OBGYN or something like that, I would know how to do epidurals and, you know, those kinds of things that I'm not even going to have access to there.
Yeah.
So it's really nice. The doula has kind of forced me to see how can you work naturally with the body and not with these other interventions and stuff in place. Like, how can you make this progress without other support systems in place?
No, that's amazing. Now, you mentioned that you were in South Sudan.
Yeah.
Now, how was it for you being the woman in South Sudan? Because some people, when they hear South Sudan, they're like, must be rough. So single, and the women, I'm sure you went without your parents.
Yeah.
How was it for you? How was the experience?
It was really good. I had a great team. The team that was there actually had, South Sudan was quite calm at this point. It's had, you know, a couple different, you know, turmoils of various sorts over the years and cattle wars and stuff like that within that region. But while I was there, it was quite peaceful. There was a lot of rules in place because the organization that was there had been there during the majority of the war between Sudan and South Sudan. Like, they had been there before it was even considered South Sudan. Yeah. So they had a lot of rules in place, which I found overwhelming at the time, but were probably good. And then I also had another lady that was out there with me, a single lady from Utah that she was there as a teacher for some of the missionary kids. Wow. And then a nurse from Australia. So we had a nice little crew that I got to know and really enjoyed. And we were mostly on our compound, and then the connecting clinic and connecting church. There was a little bit more regulation on going out into the market and stuff like that. But I found it really sweet. I would love to go back at some point in my life, and built some sweet connections there. So
that is amazing.
Yeah.
Now, James, what about yourself? Because you call yourself a pilot.
Yes. So,
but before you go there, you know, I for me, mate, I struggle with airplanes. Yeah. I have to fly because I have to fly. Yeah. Now, I struggle already if I see a senior pilot. Yeah. I already struggle. I'm not sure if I'll get in a plane with you.
Well, let me try and convince you otherwise.
All right.
I think, I work for an organisation, or we work for an organisation called Mission Aviation Fellowship. Okay. Our heart or our mission is to see isolated people changed by the love of Christ. So we're working in very rural areas. We're flying in and we're supporting missionaries. We're flying evangelists, Bible translators, we're flying Bibles. We work with humanitarian organisations. We support doctors, we support remote clinics. We support the remote clinic that Danielle was working with.
I was flown in by MAF to South Sudan. So.
Was it with James?
No.
I was 16 at that point. But, so that's what we do.
But tell me, how did you, let's take a step back. Yeah. How did you actually get to wanting to become a pilot? Because you're 21 years old. Yeah. So when did you actually start practicing?
I think if we go all the way back, I think I'd always been interested in aviation. And my dad and my grandfather and my brother, they weren't pilots, but they were just interested in going to air shows and such here in the UK. Yeah. So that's where, I thought, being a pilot would be kind of cool. And then being in Kenya, I met people so your family were in aviation, not with Mission Aviation Fellowship, but with another mission organisation that worked with planes. So I met people like your dad, but others that were pilots. I met other MAF, Mission Aviation Fellowship pilots, and I thought, I was 11 when we left, but I thought maybe this is something that I could do when I'm older. And then throughout my teenage years, God was really working. He was really calling me to it, and I can look back now and see that, and it's wonderful how he did that. As I came back, I read about Nate Saint and Jim Elliott's story, and to those watching, I'd really recommend learning about those guys. They gave their lives for the spread of the gospel, reaching an unreached people group, and Nate Saint was a missionary bush pilot. He was with MAF. And so that story inspired me and others about how MAF actually founded and became into existence. Like after World War II, some Christian guys got together and said, we want to use planes for peace, not for war. So they went out to Africa, was the first place they went out to, and they started this work. And so that was happening, and then I was involved with the Royal Air Force Air Cadets here in the UK, and I did a little bit of gliding. I got the opportunity to go solo, and that really confirmed I just had a love for aviation.
And proved you had the skill.
And I could do it, to an extent. That was the first part. And I returned to Africa a few times, went back to Kenya, went back to Zambia, some shorter trips, and that really confirmed I had a heart for mission, a heart for Africa, and I had a heart for God, and I had a heart for these airplanes. And I thought, what can I do with this, And God was calling more and more to MAF, and I got in touch with their youth team as a sort of 15, 16-year-old, and I I said, you know, how can I be involved? And they got me to do some volunteering with them, and that was nice. And then in my sixth form years, I said, look, how do I do it? How do I become a pilot? I've got very limited experience. I've done 5 hours in a glider, you know. And they said, well, there's not really anything yet, but we're thinking about maybe something will come together. And so we did some assessments and so on and interviews, and they came back positive. And then they said to me, well, it's probably going to be £100,000. And I said, well,
Whoa.
I do not have that money. And so it seemed like the end of the road, actually. And I was going to go off to university here in the UK and do engineering.
Is that what it costs to become a...
It was really
It's
expensive.
ridiculous.
Yeah, £100,000 quite
How much is
easily.
it for like an hour flight normally
I mean,
with fuel?
An hour flight can be £250, £300. You know, it can
That's
be
crazy.
expensive depending on the aircraft. So I was in this place
Wow.
of thinking, okay, I'm going to have to put this behind me. But then MAF here in the UK has said, look, James, for a number of years we've wanted to start a pilot training scheme. Would you like to be our guinea pig and be the first to
Wow.
try the Future Pilot Program is actually what it's called. And so the last 2.5 years, that's what I've been doing with MAF. And it's incredible how God, you know, placed this right there, right then. It seemed like it wasn't going to happen. And that's just amazing. And
that's what
been
it's
so blessed
I mean,
by that.
I'm just thinking, you telling the story, I'm thinking, man, how God he's directing you the whole time.
Of course, yeah, in little ways, you know. And my parents now, they look back on Kenya, and you know, we went with this one reason to do this. They went with this reason to do this work with the bookshop, and there were many other reasons why God had us there. And one of them was actually to lay some seeds in my heart that have now,
Carrying on to the next
generation.
Yeah.
So
That is amazing.
and so and let me. I said I'd convince you, you know, about the training. So the last 2.5 years I've been training with MAF, and it's very specific. So it all happens in mainland Europe, and we specialise in the short little airstrips we land on, and flying in tricky terrain. So it's very specific training, trained the MAF way, we say, right from the beginning. So my instructors are all previous MAF pilots. They've all experienced it in remote places in Africa and Southeast Asia, and we're now at this point.
Do you think he convinced me?
I don't know. He's convinced me because I've flown with him a bunch now, and I.
Okay, so
Trust
I
you,
would probably
Off
go.
with my wife. Maybe we should fly sometime. You know, that would be.
Definitely, mate. Maybe.
With small
In the
planes
little
too.
itty bitty planes,
Yeah.
2-seaters. No.
But basically, I'm a bit skeptical of planes, but I know it's one of the most secure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the
Yeah,
safest form of
transport.
transport. But yeah, it's amazing to be able to be with MAF. And yeah, I mean, we use this, we say in parts of Southeast Asia, it might take someone 4 days of walking on rough, dangerous sort of terrain roads to get to a hospital, to get the medical need.
To get food?
Yeah, to get medicine. And if they're really sick, then they just simply can't do that. But if we have a little airstrip and we take our 8-seater aircraft out there, put a stretcher in it, in 30 minutes, we can have them at that hospital. You know, 4 days, 30 minutes. That's life-changing. And so
because I worked with Logos Hope, right, in the OM ships. And there was a guy there on board. He's from Papua New Guinea.
Yeah.
I know that's not where you're going. You're going.
It's nearby, Arnhem Land in
Arnhem
Australia.
Land,
Australia, yeah.
But basically, this guy, he would walk days and days from village to sort of. No, it's not even village to village. You go from one village to get to the other one. It's literally days of walking.
Yeah.
So a big shout out for Russell. Russell, if you're listening, I'll actually send it to him on WhatsApp so he can listen to it. I'm always thinking about you and the way God's used your life.
Wow, yeah.
It's really cool.
But you saying that, you know, like people like himself, you know, and he does that as going to preach the gospel, literally.
To be able to get to these places, it's now a lifeline that we're able to do with these aircraft. So.
Well, what I like about your story as well, just this first part, because we're going to go a bit more into depth in it, is how God provides like £100,000 for you to become an airplane pilot is
insane.
I think
money that I do not have.
It's impossible.
Especially being, I'm a MK.
Yeah.
So being an MK, we know there's no money, there's no 100k sitting around to put you into that school. But you see how it doesn't matter what it is, the cost that it will be.
Yeah.
Now, when God has something from you, wants something from you, and if you commit yourself to that, to His will, He will do it.
Oh yeah.
No, absolutely. He makes a way, you know.
And He's proved that time and time again. Sometimes not the way we want it to go, but He makes it happen.
Yeah. I think that's a great point already. You know, a lot of people who are listening, that's maybe a state that you're in right now.
Yeah.
You know, thinking, there's no way I can do this. I remember when we came to study here.
Yeah. Even studying here is, you know.
There was no way for us to come. Literally, we had no money to come. And we did our full BA for 3 years, which cost significant money for 2 of us.
Yeah.
And we left without 0 debt.
That's incredible.
Everything was paid for. and it was just God's hand on it.
Yeah.
And you had the training that you needed.
And
you know?
exactly.
Yeah.
And here we are again, and
Yeah.
and here I have the opportunity to sit down with you guys and just be discussing some. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back now to you guys
Yeah.
getting to know each other. So basically, you then studied to be a pilot.
Yes.
You did all your doula stuff
Yeah.
until you were like 17, right? 18 when you.
Yeah, so I was in South Sudan, I was 17, and then was actually quite a rocky road of figuring out after that how to get certifications, degrees, whatnot.
Okay.
I originally came back thinking, nursing school, that's what it will be. So I went off to university, started doing nursing school, got 2.5 years in, and that program kind of fell apart. And so I was like, okay, I guess I find another program. But then we were thinking of getting married at that point. So I said, I'll take a semester off, we'll get married, and then I'll find another program.
Yeah.
I started taking courses online for this next program that I was going into, and they just said, take a couple courses, and then we'll bring you into the nursing program. I said, okay, great. And then I contacted them once I had done those courses, and they said, all the deadlines have already passed. You're going to have to wait another year. But we had already signed a contract with MAF at this point.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay, so I guess nursing school isn't it. And that same day that everything fell through, I got like an email that was like, doula courses half off. And I was like, oh,
Wow.
what's this? So I started looking into it.
Yeah, God providing,
So
door
he's closing
opens.
one door and opening the other.
Yeah, exactly. Slamming one door and opening a window somewhere.
Now let me just touch on that,
yeah.
because when God slams a door
Yeah.
and closes the door, sometimes he closes it, sometimes he slams it. Right?
Yeah.
It depends the way we feel. But how was it then when you saw, okay, Lord, no, I'm about to get married, I was getting ready for this.
Yeah.
I really wanted this nursing school, because I'm sure that's what you really wanted to do and get ready. And then boom, doors shut.
Yeah.
Now, I
It
mean,
was hard.
now you say it
Now
very
I
easily,
see it,
like,
yeah.
I was just shut the door and then open the other one. It was great, but it wasn't like that at the time.
No.
Sure. And how did
Yeah.
it feel then?
I mean, I think for me personally, it felt like I had failed because you work towards something, and especially like we were already getting married young. Everyone says, "Oh, as soon as you get married, the rest of your life is just gonna fall apart. You're not gonna do school anymore. You're gonna give up everything to get married. Don't get married young." All of these people say things, and then right when we were getting married, I was like, "Oh,
Thank you very much.
wait." So it was a little bit like, okay, wait. This isn't how it's supposed to work. I was also, though, just with the program falling apart and stuff like that with my nursing school, it was really hard the last semester. So I was a little bit burnt out on it as well. So part of it was refreshing to take a break from it. But it was definitely like, but this will work out eventually, right? It will come to be, and I'll be able to finish. So now it kind of feels like, did I waste the last 2.5 years? Like, am I going to get to use those?
Yeah.
And so I know I really struggled with that, and I struggled being really frustrated with, the programs for not communicating better or not, but then as I looked into it more and started realizing, I think my one problem with the nursing program is, and I worked in the hospital for a little while as a nursing assistant, and my struggle with that was that there was a required disconnect from the patients. You had your patient on the floor for 2 days or whatever, then they left, whether they moved floors or left the hospital or, went home, whatever it was, you could not have communication with them ever again unless they found you. So there was a lot of rules in place with that, and so you would build connections and then they'd be gone, and then you'd build new connections and they'd be gone. And I really wanted to be in a branch of healthcare where I could walk through life with people and really journey with them and be there for the good times but also the hard times. And that was something that doula really opened the door for. Often a doula is someone who is invited into the family's lives, into the family's home. You get to really walk with them through each and every stage, through pregnancy, birth, and then even postpartum as they go into parenting, all of that. So
that is lovely.
Yeah, it was really God providing in in amazing ways, but it's never easy in the moment.
But it's an awesome journey, though.
Yeah,
it's a very exciting journey. And
yeah,
and it's funny when you look back now. We laugh about it here because we just had this conversation, but in the moments it is rough.
Yes.
And we all go through that.
Yeah.
It's not that we are, let's say, I've been through that in many situations in my life.
Yeah.
I'm sure James has also been through that, but just seeing the way God directs us and when you really trust, because we can be frustrated, but if there is trust, it doesn't matter if you're frustrated, we continue trusting because we know that He has the best for us, right? And He can see beyond what we can see.
Yeah, absolutely. And He's shown that throughout the Bible, and He shows that throughout our lives and each other's lives, and time we forget it. But it is just coming back to that reliance of course, God will provide, and it might not be in the way that I first imagined, but it is amazing to look back and just see, wow, he was really working. He had it the whole time, and I should have known that, but actually in the moment, that was a difficult thing to trust. And it's an encouragement to anybody, really, is just keep that faith and reliance in God, because he will, carry you through whatever it is.
And what about for yourself then? Do you have any moments like this? I mean, you did have the £100,000 moment.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. And that was hard, because you thought, I really didn't like the idea of doing 4 years of university and an engineering degree. And it was all lined up, and God took me in another direction. I think throughout the training program there have been some hurdles, and it's a new program for me, but also for MAF. This is something that now, praise the Lord, is running every year.
It develops.
It's developed well, but there were lots of things
bumps
that we had to figure out as you do. And one part of that is as you get onto the further stage of the training, you have to sit some sort of 13 theory exams. They're really big exams, and they just take a lot out of you. And they're very niche, awkward sort of questions to answer. You've really got to get in the head of the person that wrote them to answer them.
Some of them are ridiculous. Like, for a pilot, what is the size of a nasal droplet? Why does a pilot need to know that?
They're just odd questions. What's the colour of a fire engine? And the correct answer is yellowish green.
Not
it's
yellow
just,
or green, but yellowish green.
So they're just very particular. Anyway, in that moment, you think, this doesn't help me. And a lot of the stuff that I was having to learn wasn't going to help me in the future. And I was really struggling to just get past these, because they're difficult and they're very particular. And it didn't feel like it was aiding me in any way. But throughout that, God was there and was faithful. And, in the end, we were sort of able to find a way of slowing things down a little bit and taking some more time to do this phase of the training. And we got through it.
You got through it.
And then we were able to say, okay, for the next people that come through, we need to do this in a different way. So actually, even though it was hard, then in that moment, God used it for those that
people
come
down
next.
the line.
And there was purpose to that as well. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So then you guys got married.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was in
around that time, 2022.
Yeah.
2020, so 2 years ago. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
August 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
So then after all of this, you guys ended up coming to
All
Nations.
Yeah, it was the final part of the training for us, was to do the en route course,
which was the most
here.
difficult part of the training.
Yeah, really one of the really special moments of this course.
Quite a blessing. Oh, were you going to share a moment?
No.
Okay. It was really a blessing, because we had both focused a lot on the very practical aspects of training. We had just spent 2.5 years doing flight training, doing nursing, doula, whatever it was for me. But really to build emotional, spiritual foundations before we went out. We were feeling like we haven't had any training for this. We desperately need a time where we get to focus on something other than flying and nursing.
Which is very important.
Yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, so it was such a blessing being able to come here and actually have everything else go on hold, in a sense. Like, we weren't trying to do the aviation stuff or the nursing stuff or the doula stuff or anything like that, and just focus on just some time really preparing ourselves mentally, emoally, and spiritually for the next steps.
Like you said, you guys were already sort of deep in yourself in your relationship with God before you came here.
Yeah.
You were trying to get a bit more in depth with the Lord.
Yes.
I'm sure also wanted to hear from Him exactly what it is, and He would prepare you. But it's funny because statistics shows that when people go to the mission field, what brings a lot of them, or breaks them apart, or brings them back, is not. Of course, it's important. It's probably one of the most important things, and it's the depth of your relationship with God, for sure. But that's not what brings people back. Their lack of sort of knowledge and theology itself. It's actually team conflict.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's very true.
And so you guys came to All Nations.
Yeah.
And what did you learn?
Yeah, we learned
a lot about teams.
A lot about different things. I mean, the en route course is a special program, because it's 10 weeks. It's 1 term here. But it's very intensive, and we looked at finding our identity in Christ, what is mission, integrating and relating to different cultures. And so that kind
you've been studying for real.
Yeah. And we looked at building God's kingdom. What does that global mission look like? But we really did think about what is it like to live in different cultures in different places.
With different cultures within your team, not only outside of your team. I mean, our en route course was, we had people from the Netherlands, we had people from the UK, we had me as an American, and then we had
people from Singapore. Yeah.
So it was just even within that class, you have
the whole group. You have that
so many different cultural views and
cultural sort of shaping you.
Yeah.
Not just with the tutors who are teaching you, but you have that sort of cultural.
And what was really nice is we had experienced, you know, a different culture in Kenya and East Africa, and coming here really helped us. It was nice to actually see it kind of written down, because we had all of these sort of ideas in our head of what things look like, and it was nice just to sort of study a little bit at these things and see, okay, yeah, that is what I remember from that, and you know, that does make sense, and you know, or that was actually a bit different.
You can relate to the experiences you had before.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it calls you out a little bit. Like we had a course on missionary kids, and at first I was like, no, that's not me. Why do you put me in a box? No, that's. And then you know you slowly realize, oh yeah, maybe that is a little bit of me.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, what would you say was your favorite sort of topic that you studied here, or module that you did?
It's a very challenging question. I really enjoyed just the first week about finding our identity in Christ, and then from there we go out to do
building that foundation.
Yeah, building that foundation, and then going out and thinking about global mission. Again, it was really helpful just to think about that integrating and relating in different cultures, and how we come in integral mission. You know, Mark Galpin, he's done a podcast here. I think it's the first one. That's
great.
He's a great teacher in terms of that, and just thinking about we build relationship, and then we can bring in some sort of evangelism. It's not we just evangelize and we don't have a relationship. Yeah. It's not that we just have the relationship, but we do this together. You know,
it's a holistic.
It's a holistic view.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, interwoven together. It's not like one and the other. They're interwoven together. So, yeah, that was really helpful, and we really enjoyed that.
Yeah. What about for you, Danielle? What do you think was the part that probably most maybe challenged you, or maybe excited you?
A lot. There were several things. I mean, each week there was something new. Each day, but I think really thinking back on it, one thing that going back to that integral mission, just the idea of really empowering people to help themselves in a way, not coming in and being their aid or their help or whatever, because ultimately we're very momentary. Like we can't be there forever support. We don't have that strength. We don't have that ability. Christ does. But bringing in not only, you know, the gospel, but actually like the whole teach a man to fish and he'll eat for the rest of his life. If you just give him a fish, he'll only eat for a day. And so coming alongside and trying to empower communities to build their own church, to build their own.
Galpin in there.
Yeah.
He'll be proud.
Yeah. And it was a lot of Mark's lectures that spoke on that, but really coming alongside people, not dragging them, but walking beside them until they can walk on their own in a sense. And
it's really building people up as you build relationship
and just the tools for that, and or I mean it's different for every situation, but having a mentality of the tools in which to look at each situation and say, okay, how can I best come at this in a way that actually brings out their aspirations and their desires and helps them succeed in life the way they want to, not the way I want them to.
I mean, and one of the things that I realised, I mean, because I was in the mission field for a couple of years as well, and I mean still am, but on and off sort of thing. But for me, is sometimes we go to the mission field and we think, okay, we are the ones bringing stuff in, you know, bringing all these knowledge that we think we have, and all the technology that we have, and all these stuff that the West provides for us. But actually, when you arrive there, and when you're there, and when you meet the people, you're humbled, and you think.
You learn so much more from
learn
them.
quite a bit.
I'm actually here learning more than I'm actually giving.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And that's always hit me very, very hard, because we do have that tendency to think that we're going in at these superheroes, you know, saving.
Yeah. And it's totally not that case at all.
Exactly.
You learn so much more about yourself. I think. Yeah, God uses you in that moment in whatever way. Often we don't always see why God has us there or what, but often we leave and we realize from our time in Kenya, we both would agree. Yeah, God really just was working in our hearts during that time. And we learn a lot about ourselves and about how we react in different communities, different cultures. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, with like labor and delivery and stuff, we have a very medicalized idea of it in UK, America. You know, we have our system and our way that we'll say is the right system and way. But if you go to some of these more remote communities, they give birth just fine, and they have some pretty cool techniques and skills. And you know, they obviously there are occasions where that more westernized medical aid coming in is helpful, but it's just, there's in every field, there's always something that you can learn from, different cultures and different communities.
That's lovely. I think that is I think that's the key as well for us to always, we have to always be learning and be, what they say, like forever learners, right? Always wanting to learn, wanting to grow.
We say that in aviation as well, because when you stop learning, that's when things go wrong, and that's the same for this, for Mission. When we stop learning, we think we've got it all. We really don't, and that's when things really do go awry, go wrong.
That's awesome, guys.
Just being with you guys inspires me. I already want to go to Mission Field with you guys as a team.
Come on.
Visit.
So how many people do you have in your team then?
We think we'll make a team of 20 or so. So we'll be
That's a
working.
good size.
It's a good size. So typically with MAF, we really want to encourage national staff being part of our team. So people in the areas that we're working. Unfortunately, in where we're working in Arnhem Land in Northern Australia, there just isn't that sort of
Just
option.
give a little background on Arnhem Land.
In terms of Arnhem Land, it's right in the top of Australia, just below Indonesia, and it's about the size of Scotland and Wales. It's a really big place, but there's one road, a dirt road, they call it the track, that just cuts across it. So it's incredibly isolated. And we were talking to some Australians the other day, and they said we had no idea that Arnhem Land existed. Even Australians don't know that it's there.
Wow.
And so we're based right in the middle of it. Is
it like a jungle sort of?
Sort of. Yeah. It's you've still got sort of the desert floor, but there is sort of bushes and trees that have kind of emerged, sort of savanna-esque.
It's kind of like the trees that look like they would be fine if there was a drought. Like the really hardy, bushy trees.
Yeah. So that's sort of the environment, and then there's indigenous communities that live throughout this region, and so we're based there, and we're there to support them, and so we're also supporting missionaries that are there that are reaching out to them. But we're also there in terms of medical aid and things like that. And so as a team, we're 20. There's some Australians, US, various people from Europe. But unfortunately, in these areas, there's just been a lot of hurt. So
between the Aboriginals and the Australian government, there's a lot of history.
And so even as recently as the 1970s, the Australian government felt that it would be appropriate to take the children away from these Aboriginal people because they
weren't suitable parents.
Yeah, they were fit to be parents, and so they take them off the boarding schools, and they would never go back. And there's a lost generation.
And often they were trained at these boarding schools to be low-wage employees in the Western developed Australia,
that's bad.
which is really rough.
So that left a very it really put a division between the communities.
50 some years ago.
Yeah.
That's something that today's generation still remembers and feels very much so. So there is a lot of hurt, a lot of guardedness, for good reason. And a lot of walls in place within the communities that we'll be working in.
So are you guys going to live in these villages?
Yeah, we're going to live in probably the biggest community. So the biggest community there is called Nhulunbuy. It's about 3,000 people live there.
That's tiny.
Small, but that's really
that's
small.
The big one, though.
That's the big one. And so normally the little homelands, as they call them, 150 people, even less. And we'll have a little airstrip there. And that
everyone
will be
knows everyone.
Yeah, within those little communities.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so we've had this past, and then currently in the present, the government feels quite bad about how things were handled, and so then they're sort of propping up these people, trying to find forgiveness through physical things. What can we give you to say sorry?
Some
and
of their initiatives have been really good,
but
others of them are just them throwing money at things.
And so these beautiful people have lost some of the generations that would have come. They've been taken away. They've lost a lot of their purpose because now all of these physical things are giving to them. They don't really know what to
they don't need to work
they
for
don't need
anything.
to work. And so it's a state of hopelessness, and it's how here do we enable people to find that purpose in life, and ultimately hoping that they find their identity in Christ as well. But that's why it's been really hard to have a nice mix of national staff and international staff in our program, because there's not a desire to work with us or a desire to work at all.
They're very open and welcoming MAF into. They now have ownership of the land. Arnhem Land is owned by the Aboriginals, and so they have to allow companies and organizations to work there. So they have welcomed MAF to work there, but they're not entering into active partnership with them in any way.
And what sort of religion is predominantly there? Is it
very sort of indigenous? You've got
like
traditional
Okay.
religions. So yeah, very animistic. A lot of ancestral worship. That's very common. The funerals there will last sort of 2 weeks, you know, and the body will be carried off to the homeland, you know, where they originally came from, and yeah, it's very different to what we're used to. We talk
how
here.
is that? How is that spiritual warfare? Does it?
Yeah,
is there a lot
very
of that?
active.
It's much more obvious, I think. Here we talk about contextualizing the message of the gospel wherever we go, but the devil definitely contextualizes too, and so here he works in different ways. Whereas there in Arnhem Land, you see it on a much more physical level.
Yeah.
Someone's placed a curse on that person, and then something has happened. And to us from the West, you go,
demon possessed
I
sort of thing.
I can't get my head around what has just happened, you know. But there are very much evil spirits at work, and so yeah, that's something that's very different and something that we have to be aware of.
I can imagine. And that's also, I think, the importance of, you know, knowing that and preparing yourself, because a lot of people, let's say, if you grew up in the West, you've never seen that before. Like for me, I grew up in Brazil. Oh, I see that all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, you're in the middle, you're literally in the middle of the service. Someone just drops on the floor, demon possessed. You're like, what the heck's going on here? And everyone hands on, and Jesus. So it is something that I've never seen it here before. Never. But when I go out to Brazil, I see it all the time.
Yeah.
You know,
But I would say that it very much so is active here in very different ways, though. And often, honestly, if the devil could convince us that he doesn't exist, I mean, he's won the battle there. So I think that's what he's getting us
of different ways that we just don't see
in the Western world, because you have to be on guard, and if you don't see it, you don't.
And that's the thing. I always mention that sometimes when I go to preach someplace, we talk about that, and I say no. Sometimes we feel like, okay, we don't see it because it's actually worse here because you can't physically see it. You know.
We're in a post-Christian world here. You know, we in general we're moving on, and that's a real shame. But I think that's a part of it. You know. So yeah, Arnhem Land is different in that sense, and it was helpful just being here and just sort of thinking through those things and how do we respond. And ultimately, you know, we're thinking here. So then, what is the good news for them? And ultimately, Jesus conquers everything. Through him, we can be saved from every and safe from these evil spirits that are around.
It's a very fear-based culture and religion, and a lot of it is like, for example, some of the flights that they do, everyone covers their head when they fly over a certain area, otherwise they'll be cursed, or you know, all of these things that if they don't fit in the right boxes, then they're going to have, you know, ancestral spirits or evil spirits or something after them, and so it's a very fear-based dynamic. And so to bring in Christ, who conquers fear, is a really powerful thing. But yeah, just finding a way to make that something that they want, and showing it to them in a way that it resonates with them. Because if you pull out, often in the Western world, you have kind of a court system type idea of, you know, Christ, and you know, we were guilty and then we came before the judge, and you know, he paid our due. You know, we have that idea. If you bring that out there, they're like, a judge? You know, that's not how our culture works. That's not how our system works. So bringing it in a way that it really resonates with them, and actually thinking back to the previous question of something that I really enjoyed here at All Nations, one thing that's really prevalent in the culture in Arnhem Land, the Yolngu people is the people that we'll be working with, is their art forms. They use their art forms for everything. It is their communication, it is their direction, it is how they pass things on to the next generation. It is everything. And I mean, they have huge spiritual meaning in their art forms as well. And one course that I took while here was an art specific course, and looking at how to revive the Christ-like things in culture through art. And so looking at their culture, they've held on to a lot of the darkness as, you know, Western influence Australia has come in. They've lost a lot of the good aspects of living off the land, and you know, they have really amazing ways of working with nature in a sense, and they used to be kind of nomadic and would use this and then it would replenish, and you know, all of these things. They've lost a lot of that as the government has brought in some aid, but they've held on to the dark spirituality. So bringing in, potentially
Life,
through art, bringing that
art,
back
yeah.
to life, and
through things that were part of their
reigniting-
culture,
reigniting the things in their culture that glorify God more than our culture ever could in that way. Our culture has aspects that can glorify God, but theirs has aspects that we've never even imagined that can glorify God. And so being able to find those, maybe through art, maybe through other things as well, and bring them back to life so that they have passion and they have purpose, and they see that they as themselves are valued in God's kingdom, and not just this Western Christianity or anything like that.
Do you know what I've been learning about this conversation? Is just listening to you guys and see how well prepared you are.
I don't know. We have a lot to learn still.
I mean, definitely.
We
always
talked about that earlier. Always be learning. But
like, you know the culture you're going into. You know what to expect from some of these the spiritual sort of
warfare and
and environment that you're going to be going into, which if you have never been to those places, it would be a shock. But you're aware of that. You're just excited and
we're excited,
inspired just to go and and get hands on, get your hands dirty. And that's inspiring.
We're really excited, and these are just some lovely people too. We've shared some of the hardships and the struggles, but we're really looking forward to getting to meet some of these jungle people and just be part of their daily lives, and just do life with them. Not as us and them, but as us together.
That's awesome.
And they're considered one of the most ancient cultures that is known to have existed. They have years and years and years of information that has been passed down through art, through word of mouth, through all different sorts of things. There's caves in the area that just have paintings and drawings in them that tell stories from
hundreds of years
no
ago.
one can even know the date. And so just knowing that there's this huge historic wealth of knowledge and information, and it's something that is potentially starting to die just because of the influence that has come in on it. I would be really, I'd love to see it come back to
listening
life.
to you guys talk about this now, I want to know the stories that will come out of it once you're there. And is there are you guys on YouTube? Are you going to be on Instagram? Are you going to be on is it an email only? Do you have internet?
No,
how
do
can we hear
internet. So we have an Instagram page.
Okay.
So at Mission Aviation Bush Pilot _JG.
So is that your own?
Yes, that's us, and you can follow our stories.
So we'll definitely get at the end, and I'll put the link for everyone that's interested to see the journey, because I know you listen to someone on the podcast and think, man, let me follow these guys' journey. And it would be awesome to follow it up and
and we're heading out soon. By the end of the year, we will be in program. We say.
So when are you going?
We're heading out 1st of October, so that's a few weeks from now.
Oh, wow.
And then we got to get ourselves set up in Cairns, which is not in Arnhem Land. I have to get my Australian pilot's license. There's a few,
just converting and then doing some visa stuff as well.
Okay.
And then by the end of the year, we move into Arnhem Land. So it's quite a journey getting in. It's really remote. I mean, it's 15 hours down a bumpy road, and in the rainy season, that road is just not possible. So
and that's
it really
not
is
counting.
isolated.
That's even once you get off the dirt road, you're still not at anything.
So how do you do when, for example, if something's going on in the medical situation, I don't know, and it's pouring rain,
what do we do?
You pray.
Yeah, I mean,
some things are just out of our hands.
And sometimes, having the aircraft there is a great solution to a lot of the problems, but often, sometimes it just doesn't always work in the way that hope that it will. And so you trust in God in that moment. There are many stories of an MAF pilot approaching a tricky airstrip in poor conditions, and there's a patient down there that's very sick, and you really want to get them to hospital, but it just simply isn't safe enough to land, and that can be very tough. That can be very hard on a pilot, because they know that, well, I'm putting everybody on board with me at risk trying to get in there, and so those can be hard days, but you have to you leave it with God, and you say well, maybe we can go in the morning tomorrow, maybe can you keep them well enough so that tomorrow we can get them. There are hard moments.
Do you know what I'm thinking here right now? Literally, like, it just came to my mind. Now, you're 21, 22. I have a 13-year-old boy, 12-year-old girl, and a 1-year-old daughter now, right? I pray that they become like you guys.
That's very sweet.
No, honestly, I'm just being very honest. I've been having several conversations with them lately in this sort of this discipleship phase with them. But when I see this, it's like you guys actually got it, and sometimes we spend so much time, worried about the university, this and that. Of course, we're parents, we're worried, and you're going to be worried about that at some point.
You still have input, that's nice.
But, the most important thing in our lives, which is eternal, is our life with God and doing His work.
Yeah.
And that inspires me so much, guys.
And he, through, we're talking about university, we both had our struggles there of how is this going to work? And then, out of all of it, actually, if you keep pursuing God, you work hard at it and you trust in Him, then He will find a way,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not saying that university is bad, right?
No, not at all. But that might
put
be
you
the route.
Exactly. You might study a profession, and then they'll use you through that profession. But the important thing is being available for God.
Yeah. Be willing to break the mold.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If God calls you to it.
And when I listen to you two, it really, 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 I'm going to ask my wife to watch this. She does watch some of them. So, because it's inspiring, and that's been our prayer for our kids to see, a young generation like yourselves going out, no fear, just going for it.
Yeah. No, and that's what we want to encourage. We as an organisation, as MAF, we see that our audience is of an older generation, and we really want to inspire younger people that are our age, teenagers, 20s, really get involved in with God and what He wants for you in His life. Be asking those questions. My parents, when they decided to go to Kenya, before that, my dad was kind of asking. He was working in the construction industry, completely separate to what he ended up doing in Kenya. But he just was asking, God, is there more that I can do here? And he just kept asking that question. And I think it's really important that throughout our lives we do that, because God might be calling us to something and we might not be, seeing it. And so just asking ourselves, God, is there something else that you have for me here? And sometimes there isn't, but sometimes there is.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's land the plane. It's been an awesome conversation. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Now we have lots of listeners. Lots of listeners, yes. And people that that they get inspired by the people that come here and the stories they share. So what could you guys then leave as an inspiration, that can leave an impact for people to want to pursue this sort of global mission that what you guys are stepping into? So what would you guys say? Ladies first.
Oh dear. Yeah. A lot of things. I think we've said calling several times throughout this, and one thing that I said to someone recently, and I was like, honestly, that was really accurate, is that I fell into it more than I was called into it. Yes, it is stepping out in faith and pursuing God's calling, but it is not at all where I thought I would have been, and it was really just closed doors, open doors, falling through a window somewhere. Oh, well, I guess this is the way we have to go now, and stuff like that. And through that, you have the opportunity to really rely on and depend on God in it, and you can be hugely blessed through that. But it is it's not like one day we were like, oh yeah, Mission Aviation Fellowship, Arnhem Land. In fact, we were thinking East Africa. Arnhem Land was a whole curveball of its own. But, it never is what you think. And it's not, for some people it might be, and if so, that's fantastic, but it's not a dream in the middle of the night for us. It's not we woke up one day knowing what to do. It's still very much so we're in the process and we have no clue what we're doing. And when we get there, hopefully we will learn day by day. And that's just kind of what it is.
That's amazing.
So I don't know if that is helpful for anyone to hear.
Yeah,
but
I mean, for me, I think what you just said, it's, so I think Martin Luther King said, you don't need to see the whole staircase to take the next step.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
no,
just
exactly.
trust.
And we've actually seen that a lot from the students here. Just, we talked about finances and things like that. They're just stepping out in faith and trusting, and, they need this training.
God does it.
And God provides.
Oh, yeah.
And so, as you said,
Often in ways that you don't expect. That might even mean that he provides for something different than what you were expecting him to provide for, and it changed courses completely or whatever.
Amazing.
It's an adventure.
Yeah.
But it's
Put
normally
your
fun.
seatbelt on and let's get ready.
Yeah.
What about yourself, James?
yeah, I mean, it's a really, really good question. I think, we're talking about, remembering to ask that question, is there something more, God, I can do for expanding your kingdom? We looked at here, Sam Cutty, Vice Principal, did several lectures on finding our identity in Christ. They were really good. But we looked at our identity is not found here on earth. It's actually found up in heaven. That's our home. That's where our Heavenly Father is. That's where our citizenship is, our inheritance. It is all there. It says that throughout the Bible. And so then you've got to ask yourself, well, if that's where I'm, if that's all there, then what am I doing here? And that is being part of expanding God's kingdom. That's what we're called to do. And right at the start of this, I talked about Nate Saint, Jim Elliott, those guys inspiring me. They worked in Ecuador. Nate Saint, a mission bush pilot. They worked out in Ecuador them and 3 other men went and reached the Orca India tribe. They were a fierce tribe, very remote, and they went out and they began building a relationship with them. And tragically, in that process, they lost their lives. They were killed one day by some members of the tribe who were unsure about them being there. And it was a heartbreaking story initially, but God didn't leave it there. Rachel Saint, Nate Saint's sister, and Elizabeth Elliot, Jim Elliot's wife, went back out to that tribe some years later. And they're no longer called the Orca India tribe. They're now called the Hurani tribe, which means peace. Wow. And majority of them are believers. It's a majority Christian tribe. So God really worked there. And Jim Elliot, he had this quote. He died at 29 years old. He wasn't that old. And this is what he would used to say. He said, "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose." I'll say it again. He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. Jim Elliot gave his life, but he knew he was going to lose it. Yep. He was going to die, and he gained eternity with his Heavenly Father. How incredible is that? Yeah. And so I just want to encourage people, think about that. What can we give? It is worth it. It is worth it. We can give it all for him now, and we get to gain something so incredible. So I want to encourage people with that. Yeah.
You look at this, mate. You make. No, honestly, it's just.
But it's so true, Yeah, and I want to, just challenge people with that.
And adding on to that, another really cool part about the Orca and Hurani, the son of, was it Jim Elliot?
The son of Nate Saint.
The son of Nate Saint was baptized by the guy who killed his father.
Wow.
And just that's something only God can do. Yeah. And just being a part of that in any way. And that doesn't necessarily always, I know we're focusing on global mission here, but that could look like a neighbor. That could look like your workplace. That could look like, we're all called to be a part of this amazing story. Yeah. We get to be. And it is the coolest thing to be able to participate in that and to be able to, even in the simplest way, have a say in, God's story and kingdom, and, be a part of that is just really neat.
You guys are inspiring. High five, mate. High five to you guys.
Well, thank you for letting us share. It was, we've really been blessed by our time at All Nations, and we're really thankful that we were able to do this.
And by the community here, by you guys, and we've built some great relationships and just loved it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So guys, look, thank you so much for being with us. Again, you at home listening, I hope you have enjoyed this episode. I can say I have enjoyed it a lot. I have learned a lot. It's been inspiring for me, and I think for my family, just to be able to listen to these guys and learn from them as well. So I hope you learn at home and get inspired and also challenged. I think what James said at the end is very, very challenging, and it's calling out. And I think that Danielle, she just complimented it, saying, look, we talk about global mission, but actually mission is for everywhere and everyone. Doesn't matter where you are, your neighbor, everywhere. So get engaged with God's mission. If it's at home, if it's with your neighbor, if it's going across the globe, doesn't matter. But be involved in God's mission. May God bless you guys, and may God bless you guys who are getting ready to go out to Arnhem Land.
Arnhem Land.
Arnhem Land. I'm Brazilian. I'm Brazilian. You've got to slow down. But anyway, but look, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate your time.